If you want to be with a man who leads, you have to be a good follower.
Oof. Let's talk about it. I hear this a lot from women who are like, I wish he would step up in this way. I wish he would do this thing. And then you don't want to be his mother, but you also don't want to be his coach. You want to be his partner. And so how do you really let a man lead?
Oh my gosh, that is the question of this whole chapter of my life right now. Yeah, and yeah, I mean this is a big conversation, but um for me it comes from like a commitment to first respecting the man in front of me or the man that I'm choosing to relate with, and coming from that frame, that commitment, like I'm going to respect this man. Can I hear him? Can I receive what he's saying? Can I consider how he's wanting to lead us before I react or criticize or suggest otherwise?
That's
And
a whole episode in and
yeah,
of
as I've been
itself,
practicing,
respecting him.
it is.
Because I can hear
It
people.
is.
Oh, I've heard it. Like, well, you got to earn respect, and I'm not just gonna give it. And then there's the lens of the
Mm,
men in your past and placing that on the person you're in front of right now. And what's your
yeah.
journey been with that? How do women get to that place of respect? Because as a man, it's like, yeah, I notice a difference, and I almost it's like an open door to leadership and to showing up when there's respect there. It's like, oh, that. This is just what I get
Yes.
to do, and it's gonna feel safe for me to do it.
Yes. Yes. Um, yeah, well, I'll share a bit about my journey with it, but I just wanted to say, what you just referenced about what we've learned, like you have to earn respect. I've really been in the practice of respecting as a starting point. And that is exactly to your point, creates a response from the men around me of feeling more inspired or trusted to lead, to you feel safe to offer guidance, help, um, and leadership that I wasn't really allowing for previously in my life because I was not respecting them and I was not, giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I was competing. I was really competing with them
Hey.
and wanting to lead myself because I knew how to do that and felt safer leading myself. So, yeah, okay, to answer your question, the journey. Well, gosh, I mean, this is a big one. So let me see what wants to come through. I was raised in a family with parents. My parents are still together. They're madly in love. I'm very grateful. 35 years. Um, and my mom wears the pants.
Hey.
So she, in many ways leads the way, kind of calls the shots. It's sort of her like wants and needs and vision for things that sort of lead the way in our family. And that isn't to say that my dad doesn't lead things too. My dad actually he's the breadwinner. He really provides for the home financially. My mom used to have a big career and then she retired when she had me and my sister. And so my dad has been the provider in that way. And he's very relaxed. He's very chill. He doesn't really care that much either way about things. And my mom has a lot of preferences and like wants things a certain way and tends to be a bit more controlling. Um and so yeah, my dad still makes decisions. They're actually like quite big. They're a team. They really are a team, which I really appreciate. And so, some decisions my dad makes, some decisions my mom makes. And my experience and perspective growing up was I go to my mom. I go to my mom to get the answers. I go to her to say yes or no to things. I go to her for, is this okay or is it not okay? Because my dad was kind of like, yeah, either way, it's all good. Go to your mom, ask your mom. And I would bet was also hesitant to kind of give the wrong answer. So because my mom might have a reaction that he wouldn't necessarily have because he doesn't really care. And so then he would kind of refrain from making a decision or leading me a certain way with certain areas of my life because my mom might have stronger opinions about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then that led you
So
down the
that's always
path
modeled to
of
me.
yeah, of
Yeah.
you're going to your mom, which internally, okay, I'm gonna consult my femininity first instead of like offering
Yeah.
space for the masculine to really show up.
Yeah. Yeah. And in many ways, my mom was in her masculine and that she was often in her head, right? Often very much like planning, strategic, making decisions, outcome oriented. And so I really learned that. And so I was in my head, creating, doing, making decisions, thinking about it, often overthinking, strategic, outcome oriented. And so none of these things are bad, but they tend to be more, what I have learned to be in the kind of category of the masculine, which that for me and having that label on that is helpful. It is actually helpful. For some
Absolutely.
people, like, I don't like the labels, and how can you say what's masculine and feminine, and it's all perception. And I understand that perspective too, but for me, it is actually so helpful to have that frame. And so my journey has been a lot of um, learning to slow down, learning to breathe, learning to feel into my body, to feel my emotions, and to share my emotions, to share my feelings, which not having had that really modeled, besides anger, like high reactivity, not having the more subtle emotions modeled, it's been a very uncomfortable, often humiliating process for me to feel what's there to feel under the thinking and be courageous enough to share it, especially
And
with
what have you,
men.
and what have you found the fruit of that? What's come from shifting into doing that?
Yeah, so much. Well, especially for, how I see it, more masculine men who are more in their, you know, uh, using their sword and their sight and, being, wanting to provide and protect and, provide the solutions and all these things, like these kinds of qualities, which I have many around me. When I share vulnerably and I share, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious about this thing. Can I have help? Or I'm feeling really sad and disconnected and I don't know what to do. It immediately inspires them to help, to lean in, to support me, to inquire and invite more of my feelings and my heart out, as opposed to when I when I meet them with fight response, which is my automatic response when I'm feeling uncomfortable or threatened or triggered. If I meet an activating experience with a fight response and I'm like directing or dictating or like telling them what to do or what's not okay, such a protective mechanism. It goes it's the opposite of what I need in the moment because then they want to fight back or defend or and then we go head to head, right? And then I don't feel cherished. I don't feel like I'm being heard or considered. But that's actually because when I'm willing to take responsibility, because I'm not actually revealing my heart, I'm not revealing what's underneath the fight, right? And when I do, wow, I so get to experience being led and helped, and men are like right there for me. How can I assist you? How can I support you? What help do you need? Take a break, slow down, let me get the groceries, let me give you advice, let me plug that, let me fix that thing in your car, let me support you around what's coming up in dating or business, like right there to lead me and guide me and provide solutions when I actually allow the space for it.
Yeah. Respect and vulnerability. It's
That's
amazing
it.
that space that that provides. I mean, I'll just say, even from the masculine perspective of it all, like what it's a vast difference of knowing if there's room or not. It's like,
Yeah.
will I be respected in leading, or will it be punished or stepped over, or a
Yes.
power dynamic, or something? Um and maybe it's not even cognitive, just for the ladies listening to this. Like, I'm not thinking that at all. I can look in hindsight and
Right.
kind of dissect it, but in the moment, it that's why I mentioned like an open door. It feels like there's this wall, and even if I want to, and I
Right.
consider myself a man who leads in every area of my life, I'll feel like a
Yeah.
wall where it's just
Yes.
like I would have to push past that wall to do it, versus an open door where it's like, oh, I get to show up here as myself. just as a reflection, when those things are there, it feels different in my body.
Yeah, I'm so grateful you shared that. And I so get that viscerally now, where I am now. And I'm just think it's like I have so many moments in my life and witnessing other women interacting with men that just like flash for me right now as you say that, of just like how intense it is when we reject men's care and protection and provision and leadership, when we're the closed door, right? And like how intense it is, um when men just, the masculine just so wants to give and offer and help and lead, and it's so for us, it's so for me. And I couldn't see that before when I was in my wounding. It was like they're just trying to help because they have an agenda, or like they're trying to help because they want me to feel weak, or they're trying to lead me because they don't think I'm competent, right? Like all these stories that blocked me from being able to be led, which in fact is like actually what I want, because it has me be able to soften and surrender and relax and like not have to think about it. What a
Mm.
relief. And I personally, and see so many other women as well, like take on so much more than is necessary when I don't, when I hold that wall, when I hold that door closed and I don't receive and open to the kind of leadership that you're speaking to, that you offer. Um, yeah, and I feel like heartbreak, like I feel a heartache right now thinking about that and feeling just how often we miss each other as men and women, and the masculine and feminine, right? Like we miss each other's intentions um, when we don't understand our differences.
And it's like the men, yeah, and I love that you're framing on that, understanding like the good place that it's coming from with men, and
Yeah.
that I can see has been a big shift for you. How did you get to this point? Because I hear from a lot of women of like, how do I motivate or inspire or get the best from my man, when there might
Mm.
be something wrong, or I do have a need that's not being met? Like, how can I still present those things and evoke the best in him, not trigger him, but have it be this like thing that he steps into, and also where I don't default and become the coach or address it with a fight response, so to speak, right? Of like making a stand because this isn't okay. It was
Yes.
like, hey, you got a teammate, they're on your team. Wait a second. How have
Yes.
you found
Yeah.
navigating that part of things when, yeah, maybe he is missing something and you get to present it to him? How does that happen in this way?
Wow. Well, how much time do we have? Because there's
We got time.
this is like a lifelong practice.
Yep.
It's such a lifelong practice, but I learned a lot. Okay, so I'll just back up a little bit because I think this can be helpful. So I've been on this my personal development path since I was 18. I just turned 32, so for whatever that is, for 14 years, and I'm not a mathematician. I'm a intimacy coach. So for that much time, and my inner work started out very masculine, like in more masculine energy, about like doing and creating and communicating and fulfilling goals, and right, all of that, which is great. I'm so grateful for that foundation. And then I had to learn how to feel and connect to my body. And so then my more feminine uh, part of my path started about 9 years ago. And um and then I started teaching this work 6 years ago. Well, before then, but my business partner Ellie and I started Desire on Fire, our company, 6 years, 6.5 years ago. And when I started down the feminine path, I would say it first was about liberation. And so I want to just say this because wherever you are, if you're a woman listening, and obviously wherever you are, if you're anyone listening, wherever you are is perfect, right? But for the women listening and relating to this, every stage of the journey is so important. And I don't feel like we can really skip stages. So for me, I had to go through a stage that was like so focused on liberation, right? I learned orgasmic meditation. I was working with Mama Gina and doing one taste, orgasmic meditation. I was learning Tantra. I was doing all sorts of sensual movement, S Factor with Sheila Kelly. I was learning all the things and practices and modalities to turn on my body, to connect with my pussy, to expand my pleasure, to liberate myself from the shackles of shame that I had held around my body, my sexuality, and my pleasure and desire. And that was so necessary. That was so powerful for me. I went from living in my head to connecting to my body, feeling so much shame around my body and my sex, to being able to like really experience orgasm on so many huge levels and totally expanded. I'm literally I have extended massive orgasm sitting next to me, the book, amongst many other amazing books. But yeah, like to start experiencing that was like so necessary. And my liberation stage of my journey was so key. And then I moved into what I call my devotional chapter of my journey. And so that's the stage that I'm in right now. And even my girlfriends here in Austin, we have a thread on WhatsApp called Liberation and Devotion, because they're both important, right? And then there's so many other stages and chapters, right? But I'm in this stage of devotion now. And my devotional journey is around feeling and accessing and becoming comfortable with devotional energy, right? Putting something above myself, right? We do like we do with God, like we do with something that we are worshiping. And in regards to relationship, I'm learning to exalt the masculine, right? Putting in the masculine or a man, my partner, or someone that I deeply trust, letting them be placed above me in a way that they can look out for me, protect me, lead me, guide me. And I get to be a follower, right? I get to follow. And one of my teachers, Jillian Poitier, who I love, who teaches about this, says in order to be in relationship with a masculine man and to be led by a man and to be more surrendered in relationship, we have to admit our own blindness. We have to be able to admit that which we cannot see in order to be led by someone else. And it reminds me of like when we used to play games in school, like like one person will be blindfolded and we had a partner and we had to like trust, right? Can I trust the person who's guiding me, who's saying, okay, turn left now. Okay, we're gonna step down. Yeah. Okay. And it's a trust exercise, right? Can we learn to have trust and faith and teamwork, right? And the person that we've opted in to be on a team with. And that's something that I'm learning in relationship with men. Can I admit my own blindness and allow men to offer their sight that may be beyond what I can see, and practice coming from a place of trust and respect as a foundation. Then when things don't feel good, or I feel like they're leading me astray, right? And which I'm putting in quotes because like that's all perspective, but like I don't like where they're leading me, or like my ego comes up and my identity or my perspective of what's right comes up. That is when it is my deepest practice, which again is very uncomfortable for me and difficult, but it's necessary, simple and not easy, to share how I'm feeling. So if a man is saying, someone that I'm trusting, maybe a close friend or a man that I'm dating, is like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to go on this trip and we're going to take this, we're going to take a car that's, it's a 1920 car, whatever. I don't know. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like I am so uncomfortable, right? That is when, instead of saying, no, we can't do that, that's unsafe, going into my judgments, right? My analysis, right? My criticism. Instead, I say, my practice is, okay, I'm so grateful for you planning this trip. And I'm feeling really anxious about the idea of taking an old car on a road trip. Can I have some help with that?
Automatically,
And
even me hearing
then
that, I'm
he
like, yeah,
he
how we
gets to
fix
keep,
it?
right?
It's like, yeah, yeah.
Immediately.
It's like, great, awesome. Don't want you feeling that way. Let's do something about it.
Yeah. And it's so opposite to what I had modeled, right? Because what I had modeled was like, you just kind of tell them what's so, tell them what you think, make a request, make an overt request, right? Can we take a different car? Which is providing the solution, right? And as Alison Armstrong says, and I mean, I could list a million teachers that I've worked with over the years, and especially on my devotional chapter of my journey, Alison Armstrong being one that I love, and Jillian Poitier and Laura Doyle. So Alison Armstrong says, not to, I think, is it Allison or is it Laura Doyle or both of them? Honestly, I'm sure they both say this, but like not to provide the solution, right? Present the problem, but not to provide the solution. And I've also done a lot of polarity work, studying and practice and research with Zach Rohde, who's another polarity coach, a very controversial one. I like controversial teachers. He says the same thing, right? So not providing the solution, instead just presenting the problem. And that, Kevin, has been so intense for me, because when I learned that, I was like, how do I even present a problem when I have the solution? Why would I present a problem when I obviously have a solution? Right? It's like, we should take another car, like it's so counter conditioning, right? To not present the solution that I think from my sight is right, and instead allow this man to keep leading us by just sharing how I'm feeling. Hey, I'm feeling some discomfort and nervousness about that idea or going to that event that you planned for us. Um, I don't know what to do. Just presenting the problem.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. And that's the vulnerable part.
That's what it looks
That's the yeah. This is going to be really helpful for a lot of people, I can tell. Because you're asking like, how do I? Most of the questions that I get, and I'm sure you get similar to this too, is like, how do I get my man to lead?
Yeah.
Which is coming from like, what do I do to get him to do? Which is so funny. But you know what you're saying is
I lead for him to lead.
right. It's
How do I lead
presenting it
him
in a
to
different
lead?
way. Yeah, it's presenting it in a different way and offering the space for it to happen. But I think it's like again, if you just live that way in your life because you got a successful business or whatever the thing is as a woman, it's like you gotta turn that off and shift gears a little bit to being different around your man so that you can show up in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd love to just mention like a voice that may be coming up for some of the women who are listening, if they're anything like me, which is, well, isn't that manipulative if I do know? Like, if I do have a solution, isn't it manipulative to pretend like I don't? Right. And so I want to just speak to that because I mean, listen, any thought that a woman is having while listening to this, I've had. Any objection, any like I've had all of it, I've had every like, I'm not doing that, like, and here's why: to defend my competency, right? And my independence. And here's what I want to say to that. It is not that because this work and these practices can be manipulative, right? That's not what I'm suggesting. And that's the shadow of, that's one of the shadows of the feminine. What I'm speaking to is actually admitting that you don't know. And so humility is such a big part of this path. It certainly has been for me. No one would have ever described me as humble pre last year because it's been such a journey. I'm very grateful to that this path of being more my feminine and surrendering more to the masculine has humbled me to admit that I don't know. And so in those moments where I am wanting to be more devoted to polarity, more devoted to respect and respecting this man than being right, I have to admit that I may not know, that my solution in my mind may not be the best one. So it's not about pretending that I don't know. It's like, oh no, I have an idea, but my idea may totally not be the best solution. And I'm willing to humble myself enough to admit that I don't know, admit my own blindness, and be willing to just share the problem or present my feelings, reveal my heart, and be open to his leadership, his solutions that could be totally different or potentially the same as the ideas that I might have. But he gets to maintain that position of leading us. And I'd love to hear from you, Kevin, but from my experience, what I've been told from men is like, when I allow the space for that and respect men and ask for help and to share my feelings and share my appreciation, like seriously, like men literally like tough up in their presence and their backbone and their spine, and are more motivated and drawn and inspired to keep leading because they know they're needed and they're appreciated and their leadership is welcome. And that inspires me to keep following and being devoted. So it's a cycle and it's a circuit that actually benefits everyone.
Most definitely. Yeah. I've 100% experienced that. I've experienced when it, like I said, when it's welcome and I'm showing up and I'm in flow, I feel alive, she feels alive, and it just keeps feeding that cycle. And then I've also been on the flip side of it where that gets broken and I've shown up as my little boy and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And it's like mom's yelling at me to that I did it
Totally.
wrong. Right. And again, I do this work. I would consider myself a conscious man who leads, and it'll show up because it's
Yeah,
a part of my history, you know. And so I
totally.
think the the tone in which things get presented, the space in which it is presented, at least for me, says a lot about which part of me shows up,
Mm, yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think that that's such a good point. And vice versa, right? I mean, same here. When I feel a man's heart-centered leadership, I'm so much more excited and willing to be vulnerable and reveal and follow. And if his energy is a bit more reactive, or it is a bit leaning towards domineering versus healthy dominance, then I might feel less inspired. And a big part of this journey for me also has been, can I stay true to my feminine self-worth, which is staying vulnerable even when he's not leading me the way that I want him to, or maybe he's in his, you know, young, reactive, like wounding. And that's the hardest, right? That is the hardest. Like
Mm,
whoever can be the most embodied in like their adult, right? In their adult psychology and their
mm,
adult, ways of being wins and can like rise, elevate, and can elevate any situation or relationship. And that's been my hardest. Oh my gosh, when I want to make a man so wrong for how he's leading or how he's being, or he's in his little boy, or is overly dominant, like kind of domineering. And I just want to close and be righteous about why I don't need to be vulnerable. That is like the most important moments for me to keep revealing and stay soft. And it sounds so like so many people are going to hear that and say, no, that's when you have to like, fight for yourself or run away. And yeah, sometimes that's true. But I think most of the time when I can soften and reveal, like it snaps a man back into his adult
yeah,
a lot of the time.
yeah. And I was actually thinking about as you were saying that I was like, man, like as a man, I can snap a woman back into her softness by showing up a certain way, right? And so
Yes.
so you're saying it through softening it snaps him out of whatever's going on. Yeah, I can see that, and that's definitely been something I've experienced. Man, everybody listen to this to get in the goods. I
Yeah.
hope y'all are taking notes. This is the cheat codes right here.
I hope so too. And I have to say, like, this is all like, it's so simple simple and not easy. I say all the time
Right.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, I just have to be vulnerable. I just have to soften. I just have to let him lead. And it's like, it is actually that simple and like can feel like the hardest thing in the world in the moments, right? Because we're so working against our wounding and conditioning, um, which takes work and practice.
What else supports a man from your perspective as a woman? What can women do to support their man being more in his, not just leadership with you, but also in his power and his gifts?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that comes to mind is appreciation. Like so much appreciation. When I share appreciation for a man and reflect his genius and my admiration for him, that is so motivating. And again, I'd love to hear from you, Kevin. This is just what I've experienced. Um, that when I share admiration and appreciation, it's like there's nothing that man can't do. And yes, there are moments and there are instances where he can't let it in because of his own wounding or his own stories. This is not okay 100% of the time across the board, but this is generally, right? Generally speaking. Um, and admiration is not something that I ever used to share. I don't even know if I felt it. If I did feel it, I didn't really recognize it. And if I felt it, I didn't share it because I felt embarrassed or uncomfortable admitting that I felt admiration for a man. Because again, admiration is an energy, it's a feeling that comes from respect, right? It comes from in a certain way of seeing it, holding a man above you or a person above you in a way to say, wow, I admire you. I look up to you. And I never wanted to share admiration for people because I didn't want to be beneath. I didn't want to be below. Right. Because that was my way of protecting was like, I'm going to be above you. I'm going to compete with you and I'm going to win and I will be safe. And how do you think my intimate relationships were? They either were non-existent or I was with emasculated men, right? That men that didn't need to feel that they were respected, right? Which is not actually what I want. I want to be with a man who respects himself and really requires respect. What's the word? Demands respect, right? In from love, a loving place, but demands respect because of he sees himself as worthy. And yeah, sharing admiration and appreciation with men, like it's like the secret sauce. And again, not from manipulation. It actually has to be coming from a genuine place. But like I can find something to admire and appreciate about almost any man. And I now like drive down the road and I see men working on the electrical lines and I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful for these men. Or I see men doing construction on the streets. I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful. I so admire these men using their arms and their hands and their legs and their like knowledge to like work out the freaking science on this and how to make a street and electricity work. Like, wow, I'm so grateful. I feel so much admiration for these men. And so sharing that with men too is, yeah, talk about like inspiring them to lead more or inspiring them to be more in their gifts, to realize their own potential. It's such fuel.
And it seems like you've done a lot of work to get to that place. That like just perspective of admiring men all the time. um what I'm
Yes.
gathering and I want to highlight for everybody listening is not just what you're saying in terms of what to do, but it's your come from, it's your perspective that you're having about all of this. And the admiration and the respect and the trust that you're giving to men is actually the thing that's helping you in your experience with men. Like men didn't just change. All the men in the world didn't they get together and say, hey, we're going to shift. You and your own perspective shifted, and what showed up for you, it's showing up for you, and assuming is shifted as well. So could you maybe speak a little bit more to like what that journey was like, or how people can start if they're where you were?
Yeah. Well, you broke up a little bit in that question, but I think I got it. Just that, I haven't always felt this way about men, appreciating and admiring them, right? And so how have I gotten here, right? Even though they didn't change. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Because there's many different, I mean, it's like practically I did a ton of work. I mean, I can tell you all the practical things. I worked with so many different teachers. A big part of my journey has been, because Ellie and I teach this in our courses at Desire on Fire, and Ellie is married to a man named Rob Montgomery, who leads our men's work now, because now we're shifting into having a co-ed company and having a men's path and a women's path and co-ed work. And Rob is a very alpha man. And we used to really butt heads because I was so alpha. And so I would not let him lead. And I would always have an opinion that was often contradicting his. And, I couldn't receive him. And, our wounding kind of was a match. And we're also very similar. So we were mirrors for each other. And so, yes, practically speaking, like I did many courses and trainings to learn these perspectives around understanding the differences of men and women, understanding how men need to be respected and appreciated and women need to be cherished and loved, and that we have different needs as men and women, and as holding the pole of the masculine and feminine, whichever, because you can do that in any body, but generally it's men holding the masculine, women holding the feminine. And So I learned a lot and was able to heal a lot around my wounding, feeling the pain of how my needing to be in my own masculine and needing to be a hyper independent, competent woman, the cost of that. I had to feel the cost of being that way and how that has impacted my relationships with men. And and I have grown so much from being in relationship with Rob. We're friends. I'm his son's godmother. We've
Mhm.
lived together. We do business together. So we hold many different roles in each other's lives. And he's basically like a brother-in-law to me because Ellie and I are like work wives. So, we're family, really, right? And so I we're very intimate, right? We're platonically very intimate, and he knows so much about me, um and I know so much about him. And so through the over the years, and especially in the last couple of years, I have learned so much about men and how to understand and respect men by being in close relationship with such a masculine man. And it's not for the faint of heart. And Rob's amazing, and I really deeply trust him and admire him, and that's why he's coming in to lead our men's portion of our work and community, and coming into our company, which will be changing names soon because it's becoming a co-ed company. And and um this has been a very challenging process because my ego and my identity is like, fuck you, I don't want to go with your way, I don't like your opinion, I want to keep it my way. Like, all those voices come up, and I just want to say that because I've really gotten to practice with Rob while I haven't been in romantic relationship. I'm very grateful to have him in my life as sort of a placeholder to practice with in terms of respecting and appreciating and admiring men. Um, and it's been really challenging because he is often leading us, his wife, Ellie, and myself, from a business perspective or in terms of the home environment, because we were living together for a while, and then next door to each other, and he will lead us. He will give suggestions. He will, make assessments or, analyze a certain situation with the house or with the environment that we're living in or with our business and our how we're spending money or how we're doing things. And Jillian Poitier says, my ego becomes inflamed, in those moments. And I'm like, what do you know? And I really had to learn to pause in those moments and actually remember, like, his provision, the way he's providing right now is through his vision, through his sight, his vision. And I have to consider that he might be able to see things that I can't see. And I know that when he's pointing things out about how we're being in the house, Ellie and I, because we used to be way major overworkers and we'd be stressed out and tired. And he was like, you guys got to stop this. Like, something drastically has to change. And he was making some suggestions that I didn't like. And yet he was willing to make those suggestions and bear the potential reaction for us, for our well being, for our peace of mind, for the relaxation that Ellie and I both wanted to be feeling in our bodies that we weren't at the time. And man, did I react at times. And so I'm sharing that because that's what this process and this journey looks like, right? It's not just like, oh, okay, I learned to respect the masculine. Like, I've been learning to respect the masculine for 6 years. And it's like a daily process. And I've really gotten to a whole new place with it now. I'm very grateful, but we have to have compassion for ourselves because it's a process. And I have really learned to receive his
Okay.
sight and other men's sight, to sit with it, to pause if I'm feeling reactive or defensive, to sit with, why am I feeling defensive? To feel my feelings, to hold myself in the wound that may be getting touched, and humble myself and see, like, is there something for me in how he's leading me? Is there something for me in how he is providing for me with his provision, his vision, his sight that may be different from mine or beyond what I can see? And that is such a deep spiritual practice, and one that bears so many fruits. when we're willing to do it. And it has, like, our whole business has shifted. Ellie's on maternity leave for their second baby. I'm on a semi-sabbatical where I'm just going to relax and feel and do movement and be inspired and do podcasts and lead events from inspiration and feel the emergence of our next iteration of our body of work that's coming out because I have this space to. I would have never let myself have this space. Are you kidding me? Never. I was like such a chronic overworker, like have to make a big difference, have to make a big impact, have to be working, have to be transforming the world. And it was because of Rob's stand for us that I was willing to slow down enough and let go of how we've been doing things in order to take this break, in order to create space for what's next.
Beautiful sequence of events, and I'm very excited for what's next. And I'm assuming that
Thank
there's
you.
a general idea, but it's still kind of being birthed. Am I right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, so Ellie and I have had a women's company for 6 years, and so we're still going to have that women's path. It's upgrading, it's elevating, but generally, the our mentorship program is now called Feminine Reclamation, and then there's a deeper, more intense journey after that called Sacred Initiation. And so there's a path for women, and we just had our first men's program that Rob led with two amazing men in our community here, Michael Bates and Mark Boughton, and they led the men's program called the King's Code, and that was amazing. And then next they're taking them into the wilderness, and so that's the next initiation for them. And so these paths have been made, and we're going to keep running them as separate paths because it's so important in our eyes and in our experience to do separate work. Men and women in separate rooms doing deep work around our differences and our own wounding and how that shows up, right? So that we can be ready to come into spaces together. And then we'll be doing co-ed, programs and trainings and retreats. But we're starting with a co-ed weekend in January here in Austin called Sacred Union. And so that's like the kickoff of our new co-ed community.
All the details and how to find you, and will be down below in the show notes for everybody, that's resonating
Right.
with that. That's so awesome. And I just want to say thank you again for sharing all your wisdom on the show today, and your journey, but also this was a good one. I really hope people took notes, because I'm like you said, simple. It was very simple, but it's like the thing. This is it. Re-listen to this over and over if you have to. I'm telling you, as a man, even. Oh my God, yes, please.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Kevin. Such a joy, such a pleasure to share. Thank you for having me on.
Welcome.